have enough faith to be an atheist, so it's not a class for atheism. It's obviously a class against atheism, so I didn't want any confusion there. Anyway, I want to review a little bit what we talked about last week before we get into the meat of our lesson. Also, this week, then next week, then I've got one more week after that. That last week, the third week, will be a review of everything we've covered. I'm going to, are we really out of it? Yeah, I don't have any more. But I want to use that last class to review, and if you guys have any questions or thoughts from this entire quarter that we've studied this, please feel free to bring those to that class as well. So I just want us to keep that in mind as we approach the end of this class. But anyway, last week we discussed, if you remember, we talked about micro and macro evolution. Can someone quickly, besides Lance, tell me what the difference between micro and macro evolution means? Someone can.
Micro is what we probably call adaptation.
Okay.
And within a species.
Okay.
And macro would be from one kind to another.
To another kind, correct. So we have the microevolution, if you remember, was the finches that I talked about, where their beaks would change, but they still remain finches. And then the macro would be something like a, the ape turning into a man. That would be macro. So anyway, that's the definition. We kind of went over that. And the reason was that there were 5 reasons I talked about. One was genetic limits. So we had microevolution within a species, yes. Macro across types, no. We also had, the second one was cyclical change. So there's the same thing with like bacteria. It'll mutate, but it still is bacteria. The third one was irreducible complexity. If you remember, we talked about all of the molecular science. And so when we have this irreducible complexity, it also defended the microevolution. Then the fourth was non-viability of transitional forms. We don't have any evidence, no scientific evidence of any transitional forms of any kind. And the evolutionists, remember we talked about the reptile turning into a bird and all of those pictures. There's also, if you've seen science books, there's also, I believe it's a horse, and it shows it from one going into an horse, and that's another false depiction of evolution. It's not anything real. It's just something that someone had in their mind and they drew the picture, and that's also a false evidence. And then also the molecular isolation, and that's where we talked about Darwin's theory on the similarity between ape and man. And some say that the DNA was 85 to 90%. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I found some more information regarding that. So conclusion on those, the 5 lines of evidence show that natural selection could not have produced new life forms. So just based on those 5 things, we have disproven natural law. So what I wanted to go over, I looked into the Institute Creation Research. Has anybody heard of that? So these are, did someone say yes? You've heard that? Okay. So I looked this up on their website. Did you want to make a comment about them?
Yeah, I think they're familiar with the archive.
Yeah.
They have a lot of research that they don't know what's online.
They do. And I wanted to point that out because that's another resource that we have. We have that. We have Apologetics Press, those things that that we have access to as Christians. So when you are asked a question, it's not good enough to say, well, I don't know. We have the responsibility to look these things up and get these answers when we're talking to people. But the topic that I looked at was toppling 10 fake facts that prop evolution. So evolutionists has these facts that they want to throw out. So if you notice, a lot of times people will throw ideas and theories up against the wall and they just see what sticks. And that's what happens, and people will take that information that they're getting, even though it's false, and they'll believe it and they'll run with it. So here we have these top 10 fake facts that evolutionists present. The first one was the universe began with a Big Bang. So many people talk about the Big Bang as if it's a scientific fact, but it is speculation. It has never been proven. That's another thing to keep in mind, and that's what the evolutionists will throw out there. They'll throw out the Big Bang theory, never been proven. So that's the first one. The second one, the Earth is 4.6 billion years old. I found this interesting when I was reading this. Secular scientists insist Earth formed through natural processes 4.6 billion years ago, but much evidence confirms our planet's youth. At its current decay rate, for example, Earth's magnetic field would have run down before 100,000 years. Now, they're not saying that the Earth is 100,000 years old, but they're just saying the fact that they said it was 4.6 billion, just following our decay processes that we have now, the magnetic field would have run down after 100,000 years. Earth's fossils, coal and diamonds, are supposedly millions years old, yet they all contain short-lived radiocarbon atoms that can last no more than 100,000 years. So we have another example of early Earth. So we have that as far as the Earth not being 4.6 billion years old. The third thing, geologists use good science to date rocks. Again, they don't. So this is another fact that they try to throw out there. When we're talking about how they date the carbon and coal and those type of things, I was talking, does everybody remember Trevor Major? He also worked at Apologetics Press, and I talked to him about things, and he said that in a science lab, you can create coal in, I believe it's 3 days. And so if you think about, well, okay, if you can create coal in 3 days, what did we have that we spent a couple weeks on? What did we have happen to the world that would have presented all the heat and time and pressure to make coal? And that's what you need, is heat, time, pressure. But what did we have, what big event did we have that would have created coal in a short amount of time? Who said that? Yep, the flood. The flood had all of that, had the heat, had the pressure.
You don't need time.
Yeah, and you don't need time, but well, you do need to have a certain amount of time to get, it doesn't just happen like this, but I'm not saying a long time. Yeah, so he was saying in 3 days.
Billions.
Right, and he's saying, Trevor was pointing out that they had, in 3 days you can make it in a lab with all the, yeah, with from the coal.
I don't know if they do it from the coal or not, but
Yeah,
just a few hours.
right, they get it from the carbon and they pressurize the coal to create the diamonds. But I'm saying to create the coal, that's where the 3 days or whatever that they took to make that coal is what they did at Apologetics Press. Anyway, to make that, their theory and how they use to date rocks is wrong. So we have that against them also. The fourth thing, scientists are close to creating life from non-life. How many of you heard that? Oh, they're getting ready to create life in a lab. That's not true either. Scientists have spent at least a century trying to create biological life from chemicals, yet they haven't made even one DNA molecule. Since a cell's energy, information storage, and metabolic machinery all depend on one another, the first cell could not have arisen through natural processes unless all three intricate systems sprang up at once. So we have this, I want everybody to be clear. So God is the source of all life. So turn over to Psalms 36:9. And somebody read that for me. Psalm 36:9. Anybody? Go ahead, read it. Yeah, so we see that from the fountain of life comes from God. So we have that. They also want us to believe you even share ancestry with earthworms. We see variations with animal kinds such as lions and tigers and cheetahs included in the cat kind, like we talked about earlier. We don't come from earthworms. And there's no transitional proof of that. Again, they want to point that we've even come from earthworms. Changes to bacteria and virus DNA show evolution in action. Like we talked about before, The other examples, and here's another one. Dr. Richard Linsky's famous E. coli breeding experiment at the University of Chicago was designed to observe evolution happening in the lab. This famous experiment should have given us a glimpse of evolution occurring right before our eyes, but after 50,000 generations, he still breeds E. coli. So there's another example that they want us to believe that bacteria is a source or a proof of evolution. The seventh one, natural selection gives creatures an appearance of design. Evolutionists credit natural selection through environmental pressures for the development of various creature features. For example, the properties of air supposedly help make bird feathers. The question we have to ask them is, how does an environment re-engineer creature features? What about air could plan and engineer an aerodynamic qualities of a feather? Why doesn't air give all creatures feathers? All of these things that evolutionists try to present are proven false. The other one was the whale fossils show evolution. So there's a famous Pachycetus fossil. Museums have labeled this as a whale ancestor since the 1980s, when only its skull was known. In spite of the 2001 discovery of the full-bodied Pachycetus fossil with legs rather than fins, museums continue to display this fake fact. So here they're trying to push an animal as a whale, and actually they finally found a full fossil of it, and it actually had legs, so it wasn't a whale. And then some speculated that their hips were useless leftovers from when the whale ancestors had legs. So they're trying to say that it became a whale and then it had these hips that were useless. But then they found out in the study of whales that the hips in the whales are necessary for whale birth, not childbirth. That would really defeat my point. Whale birth. So we have that example there that the whale fossils do not show evolution. The ninth one, fossil ape men prove human evolution. Have you heard of the exhibit, the Lucy exhibit? It was about a monkey, part monkey, and they said it was, I'm saying part monkey, they're saying it was human, but it was actually not, it was a monkey. So Donald Johanson insists that his fossil discovery, nicknamed Lucy, was a human ancestor, while Tim White insists that his discovery, Artie, and not Lucy, was a human ancestor. How can we know which if either is right? The museum displays showed Lucy with human feet against fossil evidence. So they're using fake fossils to prove their point. 2018, a baby Lucy fossil was discovered, and it had curved ape-like big toe. Lucy is an extinct form of ape with no human parts. So here we have another one that they're trying to push a fossil that they found and try to create this human. But that's what they try to do again. They try to throw these things, false proofs at us, and then if you run with it and believe it, you'll fall for the evolution theory. And then the last one, I thought Rich would find this one interesting. The other false claim that they say is that humans and chimps share 98% genetic identity. The chimpanzee is supposedly our closest relative in the animal kingdom, thought to have diverged from the same ape-like ancestor humans came from. For evolution to have made these changes within the secular time allowed, chimp and human genomes would have to be at least 98% similar. But chimps have 6% more DNA than humans, plus side-by-side sequence comparisons show no more than 85% similarity. Mutations don't write new code. The 98% similarity line is fake. So we have this evidence that the evolution scientists want to point or push that we're that close, and we're actually even further from that. And again, if you remember, if we have a common creator, it only makes sense in the same biosphere that there would be things that we have similar. Think of the spine. How many animals and creatures have the spine? So for us to be able to work in the same biosphere, we would have some similarity in those things. Okay, any questions on those 10 fake facts? David?
Going back to what you said right at the beginning, can you give us the website of that
Oh,
organization?
yep.
There's a lot of
Yes.
If anybody wants to do that instead of playing their YouTube games, it'd be worthwhile.
I believe if you go to www.icr.org/article, I believe that'll get you there. So if you go to www.icr.org, that should get you to that. And it's the Institute Creation Research. Mark? Yeah. Right. So that's the other point. I'm glad you brought that up. So when we're researching these things, you do have to have your guard up. I mean, the book that I read, they believe there's a hint of theistic evolution, which is false. So when you're studying these things, you have to be careful that what you're reading and ask questions. That don't just believe something as you're going through it. But yeah, we got to be careful. When we're reading those things, if you're looking for just information only, like I look for the creation stuff and things about evolution, and that's what I kind of go into and study. But doctrinally, you got to be on guard. Anything else? Okay, so is intelligent design an intelligent alternative? So Darwinists are still providing unsubstantiated just-so stories that actually contradict science observation, repeatedly claim evolution is fact. So just like we just went through, that's why I wanted to go through those 10 items. So evolutionists will still, even though they've been disproven scientifically, they still push this theory. Again, evolution is fact, but not the way Darwinists view it. So don't be afraid of the word evolution, because we still have that at the micro level. There has never been anything proven at the macro level in evolution. So when you study into evolution, understand that. And then try to just be on guard when they're trying to push their narrative. If macroevolution isn't true, then what is? So we kind of have, if you're discussing that with somebody, you probably will have that conversation. What were the two options that we talked about in the beginning of class? What are the two options of life? Right. So you have the intelligent design. So if Darwinism or evolution is false, the only thing we have left is intelligent design. That's the whole point of the class. That's what we're trying to create. So if you're talking to somebody and you can prove that it's creation, again, now what do we have to do? If we've proven that it's creation, now we've got to prove that it's the God of the Bible. And how did we do that? Well, we spent 4 weeks on proving the validity of Scripture. So if we can get people that we're talking to and finally that they agree that it's creation, go ahead and give them arguments as far as, well, yeah, I believe it's created, but I think that something else created it. So you can get them to admit that there's a super power that had created all of this, but then you get them into the Bible and you say, well, you know why it's the God of the Bible? It's because of this. And then all of that study that we did on the Scriptures, that you can use that to prove to them that it's the God of the Bible that is the creator. So there's no halfway area between intelligent and non-intelligent design. It's one or the other. What has been proven scientifically and what has been observed. So creation has been proven scientifically. Creation has been observed. Nothing to do with evolution has been shown that we can go to and have that idea. So the Darwinists came up with these objections. So objection 1, intelligent design is not science. So as we discussed, there's either intelligent and non-intelligent. Darwinist definition of science rules out intelligent causes beforehand, so they will never consider intelligent design as a science. I probably mentioned it to you before. If you've argued or had disagreements with people, if they just see it one way and they don't accept you're not going to win that argument. You're not going to convince them. So Darwinists, it's easy for them. They just say that intelligent design isn't true. They just go with it's only evolution. So that's how they kind of explain away intelligent design, because they just say it's not a science. It didn't happen. So objection 2, intelligent design commits the God of the gaps fallacy. So the God of the gaps fallacy occurs when someone falsely claims that God caused the event when it was really caused by natural occurrence. So can you guys think of anything that maybe that things happen that we really don't know, and you think, well, God must have done it? I've got an example here that we did, until science, they did study and they figured it out, but long ago, lightning was that. They would just automatically say, God threw down that lightning bolt. And that's using God in the gaps. That's saying, well, I don't know where lightning came from. God did it. Well, that's what they accuse us of doing with creation. They say that when we're trying to fill in the gaps, they just say, well, we just cover it up with God. Well, yeah, God did it, but we have scientific evidence that proves that. And that's what they try to do. So they try to blame us or falsely accuse us of doing that with filling in the gaps of something that we don't know, and just try to attribute it to God without having any evidence at all. And that's not true. That's not true with creation. So are they correct? No, for a number of reasons. This is about the God of the gaps fallacy. First, we never observe natural laws creating messages. Example, again, remember the mom writing that in the cereal about taking the garbage out in the cereal. We never observe those things happening in natural law. Intelligence is always doing the intelligent things in life. We never see natural law creating intelligence. The second one, intelligent design scientists are open to both natural and intelligent causes. They are not opposed to continued research into natural explanation of the first life. So we as Christians, we don't want to oppose science into looking into intelligent design. We want the truth, and that's what we're about. And so we don't have anything against them trying to research into that. But they are simply observing all known explanations, and they fail of the natural law. And all empirically detectable that is verified by proven observation or experiments, evidence points to an intelligent designer. So we have all of these evidences that we have scientifically prove that we have an intelligent designer, where natural law, again, they do not have that. The third thing that the objection that they came up with, I'm sorry, that's still this is the third part of the second objection, sorry. Intelligent design is falsifiable, meaning if natural law were proven for creation, then intelligent design would be disproved. Darwinist or natural design scientists do not accept any other creation story as viable. Their science is not open to correction. Their science is more closed-minded than church doctrines they are so apt to criticize. So intelligent design, if they can prove the natural law, they could disprove us. But since they don't accept intelligent design, their law in their mind can't be disproved. So that's why this line of evidence is false on their part, because that's what they accuse us of doing, and they're actually the ones doing it. The fourth part, it's actually Darwinists who are committing the God of the gaps fallacy. When they are at a loss of an explanation, they simply cover the gap with natural law, time, and chance. How many times have you heard that with evolution or the Big Bang Theory? They just throw out the time and chance, and that it just happened. It's just time and chance. And so they throw those type of explanations out, and they're the ones that are actually filling in the gaps with information that are just speculation because they don't have the answer for. Again, I said a few weeks ago how as creationists, we just have to explain where we're coming from. We have a better explanation. We have more science behind us than they do, and that's all we have to do is explain that to them in that way. Objection 3, intelligent design is religiously motivated. So there's two parts to this. First, some intelligent design scientists may be religiously motivated, but that doesn't matter because we're still looking for the truth. So who cares? It doesn't matter. So the motivation of the scientists can't disprove the truth of scientific evidence. So it doesn't matter what we think, what side we're on, we can't hide the truth. If you're doing the scientific evidence and you're open-minded to the science and to what truth is, you're going to come up with the right idea anyway, so it doesn't matter where your motivation is. Second, the biased opinion of Darwinists does it not make them Darwinists? No. The truth doesn't lie in the motivation of the scientists, but the quality of the evidence. So that's where we get our answers from, is the quality of the evidence. So I'm sure some of you have heard this. I have in communicating with some atheists or evolutionists. They say, well, you can't believe anything about origins because you're a creationist. So they'll throw that in your face like, well, you can't believe anything you know because you believe in creation. Well, that's the same. I can turn it and say it to them too. Well, I can't believe anything you say because you're a Darwinist. I mean, their arguments don't make any sense, but they try to use these arguments to confuse you in a discussion. So the second aspect is that creationists are accused of parroting the Bible. They think that we're just repeating back what we read in the Bible about creation. They think that we, are not studying, not understanding their creation. This simply isn't the case. Scientifically, creation scientists have over and over proven intelligent design comes from an intelligent designer. This scientific evidence is simply consistent with the Bible, not based on the Bible. And if you remember at the beginning of class, that's what I wanted to emphasize, that we have the Bible, and as Christians, we know that the Bible is true, but the Bible is not a science book, a geography book, or anything like that. But anytime it talks about science, geography, or anything like that, it's always correct. And that's the only historical book that we have that's like that. So we have to understand that as well, that they try to, in their argument, try to accuse us of parroting the Bible like that, and that's simply not the case. Objection 4, intelligent design is false because the so-called design isn't perfect. I like this part. So this is an argument that proves there's intelligent design. So if you know something is imperfect, you have to know what? Something's perfect, right? So that tells you right there that you have that, there's a design there. So unless you know that. So when they claim something isn't designed correctly, they're implying they can tell if something is designed correctly. This proves what intelligent design scientists have said all along. Intelligent design is science because design is empirically detectable. We can look around us. We've gone over it a lot. We know that creation is the case because it is all around us, and we can't hide the fact that there's intelligent designer just because of the intelligent designs that we see. The third thing, a Darwinist, Stephen Jay Gould, used the pandas not having opposable thumbs like humans to show poor design. So how does Gould know what the designer intended? So another good question is, how does a scientist, if he says, well, that wasn't designed correctly, those thumbs aren't like humans, these thumbs are opposable. Well, the opposable thumbs are perfect for stripping bamboo to the edible portion for the panda. So the design had a purpose. So just because you see something that we may think is not designed correctly, it is actually designed the way it was supposed to for the plan that God had created that use for. Any questions? I went over a lot of stuff there. Any comments? Okay. It's all right. Time for the church bell. Okay, so why are there still Darwinists? So if the evidence is so strong for intelligent design, then why are there Darwinists? Did you ever think about that? Does anybody have any ideas of why there's still Darwinists? If there's so much evidence against?
They have more persuasion.
Okay. Why would someone, if you have all this evidence, okay, so Mark's comment was that humanism's in force when you don't have to have a God to answer for. Anyone else? So if evidence is so strong for intelligent design, then why are there Darwinists? After all, most of these scientists that believe in Darwinism have doctorates. However, it is not an intellectual problem at all. Darwinists do not want a divine foot in the door. They do not want to submit to a supreme being, which is what Mark had just mentioned. So if you would, turn in your Bibles to Judges. Judges 17, verse 6. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. So next week I'm hopefully going to be getting into moral law, but that scripture right there explains what humankind, without God, how they kind of deal with things. They do things that they feel is right in their own mind, and not, if I hurt you, it doesn't matter as long as I feel good about that. So that's some of the things that why they're still Darwinists. Darwinists don't want to give up their pleasure in life that they see. By admitting there's a God, Darwinists would be admitting they are not the highest authority when it comes to truth. You see, part of the issue is an ego issue in not wanting to submit to God, who is more intelligent. So these gentlemen that have studied all of this, they just have too much pride. And in Proverbs 6 we read that that's one of the things that God hates, is a proud look. And pride will lead to a lot of things, and including this, by just admitting that or trying to say that there's not a God. By admitting God, they would be admitting they do not have absolute authority when it comes to explaining causes. Again, it kind of goes along with pride. They like having that ability and that authority, and people looking up to them and asking them their opinions, and when they don't have God to a moral standard, they're going to just tell them how they believe or what they define as right. Also, by admitting God, it would risk them losing financial security and professional admiration. A lot of these guys make a lot of money doing what they do. And so admitting that they were wrong, they'd have to give all of that up. And you know, that's something, when you become a Christian, sometimes that plays a part too. When you have to do something to give it up, it's hard to do. It's hard to become a Christian sometimes when you have to do those things. But again, Darwinists have that problem as well. By admitting God would be admitting you can't define right and wrong for yourself, because you would now have a moral standard. Again, next week we'll be getting into that. So they would be admitting that there is a moral lawgiver, and being God, and they would have to submit to that. And so again, that's why Darwinists maintain this. And it's so easy for them when they have that platform to just say that intelligent design isn't true and it's not science. It's easy when you have that platform and you have a lot of people that buy into that, and those same people, again, they like not having a moral law as well. Several Darwinists, Julian Huxley, once a leader among Darwinists, and atheist Lee Strobel, I mentioned Lee Strobel a few weeks back, freely admitted that they latched on to Darwinist theory because they had no limits or moral standards when it came to sexual relationships. So they didn't want to have any moral constraints. So here, these two gentlemen admitted that the free lifestyle gave them that latitude that they wanted, and being a Darwinist, not admitting that there was a God or a moral standard, they could live the life that they wanted to. So it gave them an idea of not having any moral constraints. So again, we see that living out in Darwinists and how atheists live. Any comments on that? Okay. summary and conclusion to this part. So to be a Darwinist, you have to believe without intelligent intervention. Something arose from nothing, the origin of the universe. So you have to believe that, something came from nothing, that there was no intelligent design whatsoever. Also, to be a Darwinist, the order arose from chaos, design of the universe. So I've read some articles about that. All of the intricate parts of the universe, not just talking about when you narrow it down to all the tiny cells that's in our bodies. And I'm just talking about, if you just talk about the earth in general, the mountains, the trees, the oceans, and then the universe, the stars, and the moons, and all of those things, how everything's put in place, the Darwinists have to believe that all of that just came into existence out of chaos because they believe in the Big Bang Theory. So they just believe it exploded and all of that. And then when you narrow it down to all the tiny cells and everything that's in each individual, animals, creatures, whatever, that to believe that you have to, that blows my mind that you would think that it just came from an explosion. And you could probably take 4 pieces of something and maybe cut them or break them where they would fit together. And I know you guys have heard this, but I heard it used a watch. But I'm just saying, like 4 pieces, you could probably shake that in a bag and it would never come together. And I'm just talking 4 pieces, and now they want me to believe that all this exploded and then all this came and have what we have. Right. Yeah, you can ask them that. And you always ask them that. Like, well, where did the amoeba come from? When they start that. Yeah. Life arose from non-life, intelligence from non-intelligence, personality from non-personality. So all of our personalities just, came about, without any, so you have to believe that. New life forms arose from existing life forms despite evidence of the contrary, such as the genetic limits, cyclical chains, irreducible complexity, molecular isolation, non-viable or transitional forms, the fossil record. So all of those new life forms arose from existing life forms despite evidence of the contrary. So those are the things that you would have to believe to be a Darwinist. To be a creationist, these must be true for intelligent design. A universe appears from nothing by an intelligent creator, check. A universe with over 100 fine, life-enabling constants for this tiny remote planet called Earth, okay. Life has been observed to only come from other life, never spontaneous. We've seen that, proven that in the science labs. Changes cyclically and only within a limited range, the microevolution. Cannot be built or modified gradually, and no progression at the molecular level. So we have all of those things. Those are the things that the creationist has to believe versus what the Darwinist. And so I see a vast difference and a lot more evidence and scientific backing on the creation side. And so that's, class is over, believe it or not, it's a little bit after 8. But anyway, I just wanted us to keep that. So summary and conclusion, that the Darwinists have a lot more things to prove than the creationists do.